Hi there. It's August the 1st, and we are in the book of 2nd Chronicles, continuing our journey through this book, and we are in chapters 30 and 31. We're in the reign of the good king Hezekiah in Hebrew, or Hezekiah as we know him. His name means strengthened by God, and he is determined to follow the ways of the Lord. He's already had the temple repaired and put together, but now in chapter 30 he moves to the place of reconstituting the celebrations, the feasts of the Lord. Now in chapter 29 the priests had started to re-sanctify themselves and the temple in the first month, in the month of Nisan in the Hebrew calendar. And this was normally the month when Passover was celebrated. But they couldn't do that. They couldn't have Passover at that time because the temple wasn't fully consecrated, and neither were the Levites. But there is provision in the Torah for Passover to happen in the second month, in the month of Iyar, and so Hezekiah calls for the celebration of Passover to happen. But this is not going to be just a celebration of Passover for Judah. Hezekiah has in mind that this is going to bring together all of the tribes of Israel, and so he sends invitations. He sends a call not just to his own nation of Judah, but he sends the call north into Israel, right up to Zebulun, Manasseh, Ephraim, and invites the people to come and says to remember the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, to come and to meet him again and to see him restore their fortunes and restore them after the tragedies of the reigns of Ahaz that have been happening. But unfortunately it says that many of those in the north, most of those in the north, laughed them to scorn. They mocked and they derided this attempt by Hezekiah. However, there were numbers who came out of the north to join with the people of Judah in Jerusalem and to celebrate this Passover. Also, the Levites and the priests have already all come, and they are there in Jerusalem, and so they are busy sanctifying themselves, getting themselves ready. But as there are people who are coming from the north, they are not purified, they are not ceremonially pure enough to celebrate the Passover. And so the priests get involved in sacrificing Passovers for them so that they are not, so they're still able to eat the Passover. And there's actually a beautiful prayer in Psalm 30. It's a prayer full of grace and shows that God has a real heart of mercy and compassion towards his people, because Hezekiah prays for those who come out of the north who are not ceremonially clean, that God would forgive them, that God would cover over their uncleanness so that they can eat Passover together. And it says that the Lord heard the prayer of Hezekiah and healed the land. Something really beautiful about that. Now, moving on into chapter 31, having put the and by the way, just to say in chapter 30, they have such a wonderful time in this Passover celebration, and there's lots of praise and worship and noise and song and instruments, and have such a wonderful time that they decide to do it again. And so they double the length of Passover. Instead of being 7 days, they do it for 14 days. And it says there's never been a Passover like this since the days of Solomon, the son of David. Then moving into chapter 31, Hezekiah is concerned that the Levites and the priests should be able to serve the temple now that he's put the temple back in order. That needs to have the Levites and the priests released to serve, and to do this there has to be provision for them. And so he calls on the rest of Judah to bring in offerings, and they do this. They respond, they bring in tithes, they bring in freewill offerings, and it says that from the 3rd month to the 7th month there's a piling up of all of the offerings that come into Judah. And it's exciting to see the people are willing, their hearts are with them. They want to see the priests and the Levites freed to serve the Lord in this way, freed to see the 24/7 worship that the Lord has ordained through David and through Solomon. They want to see that put in place. And so Hezekiah is able to put back in place the orders, the rotas of the priests. He He's able to see them all, those who can prove their lineage and those who can prove their genealogy. He's able to see them all put in place and provided for, and he makes space in the storerooms of the temple to take in these vast amounts of offerings that are brought. This is a wonderful time in the history of Judah. It's a time when God is in first place, and when the people's hearts are open, when they're seeking the Lord. They've got a king who's seeking the Lord. And it says right at the end of chapter 31 that God blessed Hezekiah and that everything he did flourished. Yitzliach in Hebrew. Everything he did flourished, rather like the same word in Psalm 1, where it says in everything he does he will prosper, he will flourish. And so Hezekiah, because he's put the Lord first, is seeing the blessing of God. When we put God in first place, he will cause us to flourish. And it's not just the fact that we're not doing it to get something out of him. We're doing it because there is such joy, there is such hope in having this loving God, this compassionate God involved in our lives, involved in our worship, involved in our everyday existence, that it just brings out of us this love and this relationship. And so it causes us to flourish, to become fully human, to become fully who we were meant to be. Have a very good August the 1st.